Hello, welcome to another exciting video. Uh, Tonight I'm going to go over Desmond and the preacher stories. But first, I've got some pictures to show you and review, and a correction from my last video, Desmond and the Jackson County Witch. I misidentified some people, so we're going to go over that photo. This photo here, I misidentified. This person is Flossie Isaacs right here, and this is Raymond Clemens, and this one is Desmond Clemens, and this is Grandma Annis here, Annis McKinney. And then this couple here is Ressie and John Alexander, and this is my grandmother Flora Clemens. And these two are These two are Raymond and Jimmy Isaacs. So now that's everybody. So this one here is Desmond, Flora, Granny Annis, Raymond Clemens. So glad I got that straight. So we're going to be talking a lot about Grassy Springs Church. So I got some photos of Grassy Springs Church. This right here is what the front of it looks like. Then if you go up where the cemetery is, behind the church, that's what Grassy Springs Church looks like from on top of the cemetery. So you can see there that Grassy Springs Cemetery has been around since 1873. And here's the tombstone of my beloved great-grandmother, Annis McKenna Clemens. And here's a tombstone of her daughter, Aunt Dovey Broughton. And my good friend and cousin, Brenda Sue, Desmond's daughter, has helped me with a lot of this research. And here is a picture of Desmond when he grew up, and his daughter, Brenda Sue, when she was still a young girl. Love that picture. They look so happy in that picture. Well, I need to get to the story of Desmond and the preacher. So one Sunday evening, they were beginning to hold a revival at Grassy Springs Church. And this preacher had come in from somewhere to hold this revival. And the preacher asked the congregation, is there anyone that would be willing to let our guest pastor stay all week with them during this revival? and everyone was silent, like you could have heard a pin drop in this church. And I don't know why, but Desmond hollered out, "He can stay with us, Pastor." And Millard, Clemens, and Annis gave Desmond the stink eye. And I guess that's how they ended up with that preacher staying with them that week. And the pastor pulled Raymond and Annis to the side and said, "We're going to take up a love offering for you so you can have some extra funds this week while this pastor is staying with you, because we're not going to ask you to do this for nothing. And on top of that, you can go down to the country store and get whatever you need to provide a modest breakfast for our guests during this week, and just tell the person at the grocery store to put the bill on Grassy Springs Church tab, and the church will pay for it." So that was good news for Millard and Annis, that they were going to get this extra help while this preacher was staying with them. So that preacher went home with them that night, and they walked 2 miles through the woods to Grandpa Millard and Grandma Annis's little 2-room shack, which I guess one room was a bedroom and the other room was a kitchen. I don't know, I've never been in it, but that's how I imagine it in my own imagination. And that bedroom just had one bed. And that preacher said, "Where in the world is everybody going to sleep?" Because it was Grandma Annis, Millard Clemens, their 12 kids, and that pastor. And Granny Annis and Grandpa Millard's kids was Dovey, Rosie, Flora, Mary Alice, Deller, Delbert, Laney, Raymond, Jim, Don, Nathan, Robert, and Desmond. All 12 of them. And Millard said, "Don't worry about it, Pastor. We're going to take good care of you tonight." So it got to being about bedtime, and they put the youngest children in the bed, which would have been Laney and Desmond, and Raymond was the youngest. And the rest of them got a pillow and a blanket out from underneath the bed, and they were used to it, and they just leaned their heads up against the wall and went to sleep. And that preacher and Annis and Millard stayed up and was playing cards. And when Laney and Raymond and Desmond got good and asleep in that bed, they picked them up and they laid them against the wall and let them go to sleep. And then Raymond and Millard, and then Millard and Annis told that preacher, said, "Well, there you go. There's a whole bed all to yourself, Pastor. Have a good night's sleep." So that pastor laid down in the bed and went to sleep. And when he woke up the next morning, he was leaned up against the wall with all them kids, and Millard and Annis was laying in the bed asleep. And when Annis got up, she decided that she was going to make breakfast for everybody. So everybody went outside to do chores or get a breath of fresh air or whatever. The only one that stayed in the house was Desmond and that preacher. And she was rolling out them biscuits and putting her flour and butter and whatever in her little pan and rolling them out and making them really good. And she baked those, and they came out golden brown and was the best. And she might have fixed a little bit of sausage and a couple of eggs to go with it. And she set that on the table, and Preacher and Desmond was sitting there. And Grandma Annis went to the back door to holler for Millard and the rest of the kids to come on in and eat breakfast. And that little boy, Desmond, he licked his hand. And he went, mine, 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 over the top of all them biscuits. And that preacher said to himself, I'm not going to eat them biscuits after that little boy, Desmond, has done that. I just can't bring myself to eat them. And so that pastor, he ate him a little piece of sausage and an egg, and that was it. And both Millard and Annis was wondering what in the world is wrong with that preacher not eating none of them biscuits. And but them biscuits didn't go to waste, because with Annis and Millard and them 12 kids, they easily put them all away. So every night of that revival, it was the same deal. As soon as Annis went to call everybody in, Desmond would lick his hand and go, mine, 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 over all them biscuits. And that preacher thought he wasn't never going to get to eat one of them biscuits because of Desmond, because Desmond kept doing that. And finally, the last night of the revival, that preacher said, I'm going to beat Desmond to the punch. I'm going to make sure I get one of them biscuits tonight, this morning. And so when Annis put them biscuits down, she went to call everybody in at the back door. That preacher, he licked his hand, and he went, mine, 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 over all them biscuits. And Desmond looked at him, and he licked his hand, and he said, yours, 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 over all them biscuits. Man, wasn't that an awful way to do a poor old pastor? Well, anyway, that after that revival, Annis and Millard, they went to church, and after service, that preacher, that was their regular preacher, it wasn't the one holding the revival or nothing, their regular preacher pulled Annis and Millard to the side and said, I got to talk to you. I don't know which one of your kids has done this, but one of them has pushed the outhouse of the church over. And you're going to have to straighten it up and fix whatever damages has been done, because they've knocked that outhouse over, and some of the boards and things that's come loose. And boy, Millard Clemens, he was fit to be tied, and he was determined that he was going to get a confession out of somebody. And so when they got home, he lined all them kids up against the side of the house. Dovey, Rosie, Flora, Mary Alice, Deller, Delbert, Laney, Raymond, Jim Don, Nathan, Robert, and Desmond. All 12 of them. He lined them up beside the house, and he said, one of you has pushed the outhouse over at Grassy Springs Church, and one of you needs to confess what you have done. And every one of them was silent. And he said, all right, I've got a story to tell you. George Washington, his father went out one evening, and he seen that one of his kids had chopped down a cherry tree. And he got his kids together, just like I've got you together. And he lined all his kids up. And he said, one of you has chopped down my cherry tree, and one of you needs to confess. And George Washington, he came forward and he told his dad, he said, Dad, I cannot tell a lie. It was I who chopped down that cherry tree. And his father didn't punish him for what he did, because he had the guts and the respect to go ahead and tell the truth, you know. And one of you needs to just go ahead and confess what you've done. Which one of you has pushed the outhouse over? And little Desmond, his little lower lip began to quiver. And he was moved and touched by that story. And he said, Dad, I admit it, it was me. I was the one that pushed that outhouse over. And Millard grabbed Desmond up and he whooped his tail. And Desmond said, Dad, if you was going to whip me anyway, why did you tell me that story about George Washington and his father not punishing him for telling the truth? And Millard told him, said, son, there's a big difference between what George Washington done and what you did, because George Washington's pastor wasn't sitting in the cherry tree when he chopped it down. So there you go. So those are the stories of Nathan Clemens, scratch that, Desmond Clemens, and the pastor. So I hope you enjoyed my tale, my story, and I hope that the legacy and the memory of Dovey, Rosie, Flora, Mary Alice, Stellar, Delbert, Laney, Raymond, Jim, Don, Nathan, Robert, and Desmond are honored and remembered. And I hope you keep tuning in and watching my channel. Bye.